Now, I've been around Sydney and I've asked people what causes the phases of the moon. And you know what they say?
How do we get the phases of the moon? Because of the Earth blocks the light that comes from the sun.
A full moon is basically where we're seeing the full circle of the moon reflected back to Earth. But the light is actually coming from the sun.
And the crescent, the crescents are caused by the shadows of the Earth from the sun onto the moon.
The phases of the moon, is that about the sun and the moon and the something goes in front of something?
The Earth's between the moon and the sun. We won't see the moon, and then as it goes around, the Earth gets out of the way, so more of the sun shines on the moon and we can see the moon, I think.
So let's try to resolve it. What really causes the phases of the moon?
Phases of the moon, we need to know a couple of things first. One is there's only one source of light in the solar system, and that's the sun. So at the centre of the solar system, it produces all the light. So both the Earth and the moon are half illuminated by that one source of light. As the moon moves around the Earth, our perspective on it changes, because sometimes we see just the unlit face of the moon when the moon is between us and the sun. That's a new moon. At other times we'll see the moon has moved around the Earth and we see the moon half illuminated and half dark. We'd call that first quarter. At other times still, when the moon has moved further around the Earth, we see the full illuminated face of the moon, and we call that full moon. But it's just because the moon is half illuminated by the sun, and it's our perspective on that half illuminated moon which gives the phases.
All right, so in this model, we're going to let that light be the sun. This ball here, and there's going to be the dog. This ball here is the moon, and I'm the Earth. I'm an observer from Earth. So if I'm facing the sun like this, it's daytime. And if I'm facing away, now it's nighttime for me. It's going to be dark. So why do we have phases of the moon? As we saw, there's a lot of misconceptions about why we have phases of the moon. So let's go ahead and take a look at this simple model. Here we have the moon between the Earth and the sun. And in this view, I don't see any light reflecting off the moon to me. So we call that our new moon. I don't see the moon at all here because the other side of it is lit. But as the moon goes around the Earth in its counterclockwise motion, now I begin to see some of the moon lit up from the sun over there. And as the moon progresses in its revolution around the Earth, now the whole thing is lit up by the sun. And we call that our full moon. And as the moon continues its revolution around the Earth, then I'm going to see less and less light reflected off the moon by the sun. And we go all the way back around where I can't see any more light again. So the moon phases, they're not caused by the moon going in the Earth's shadow, or they're not caused by light being blocked out by the sun or something like that. They're caused simply by how much of the lit portion of the moon we can see here on Earth. Remember, the moon is always halfway lit by the sun. This half is lit by the sun, this half is lit by the sun, here's a half lit by the sun, and here's another half lit by the sun. Now, something interesting to think about is as I bring the moon around in its revolution, and I bring it over here to what should be its full moon stage, I can't see any of it. It's all in shadow. Why? Because I'm in between the moon and the sun, and I'm casting a big shadow. How come that doesn't happen every month? How come we see full moons if the Earth is between the sun and the moon every month during the full moon phase? Well, that's another problem that we're going to tackle in another activity.